The man put the matches in the box, then broke the spoon and took the nail clippers apart. He grinds coins into iron filings and sprinkles them on the nail clippers and spoon handles. The man lights the match and then makes a jailbreak knife by connecting the nail clipper to the spoon. Frank was arrested for robbing a bank, but kept escaping while he was serving his sentence. So the warden sent Frank to the dreaded Yacala prison. The prison was a small island surrounded by ocean, and the water was freezing cold. It's a dozen kilometers from the nearest land, and it's heavily guarded. The guards are sharpshooters, so breaking out of here is hellishly difficult. But it wasn't that difficult for the master escape artist. He figured it out on the first day. Frank saw the cockroaches. He knew they meant the place was damp. Dampness means the walls and mesh are corroded. Frank poked at the walls with a nail clipper, and they were as soft as expired cookies. It takes a long time to dig with a nail clipper, so Frank came up with a solution. Frank hated the dirty spoons and asked the guards to get him a new one. But Frank took 2 spoons and got matches and coins from his cellmates. So Frank managed to make an escape knife and used it to dig holes. He dug the wall at night and dumped the debris during the day on his walks. The wall was almost done, but Frank needed to figure out how to get rid of the wire mesh. The problem was soon solved. The next day, Frank found a wooden wedge that was just right. But the wedge's metal casing made it impossible to pass through a metal detector. Frank came up with a great idea. He took out the wooden wedge and told the guards he wanted to use it as a clothes peg. The guards were smart enough to turn down Frank's request. However, Frank hid a wedge in the sole of his shoe and then jammed the shoe against the edge of the fence. Frank kicked it hard enough to make a hole just big enough to hold it. Because Frank had been helped by his cellmate, he would not forget the favor. Frank uses a mirror to see what's going on and tells his cellmate to dig a hole too. But digging the hole is only the first step in his plan. He needs to know the structure of the prison and plan his escape route. This man is going to break out with mud. He wets the mud and spreads it on newspaper to make several pieces, which he then puts together to form a dummy head. Frank borrows paint and tries to make a fake air vent. He applied paint to the head and sketched out its features. When Frank was finished, he made the comforter look like a human being and put the head on a pillow and covered it with the comforter. He then crawled into the hole and looked for an exit. Frank climbed up the pipe to the roof of the building, but almost ran into the prison guards. Luckily, Frank hid without being seen, and when he was safe, he went forward and found an air vent. All he has to do is get into the vent and he'll be able to escape. Guards realized Frank had slept in early today. The guards explained that Frank wasn't feeling well. However, when the guard's baton falls to the ground, he realizes Frank is unresponsive. The guard realizes something is wrong and walks towards Frank to touch his head. Luckily, Frank was already back in jail. The next day, Frank and his cellmate were discussing the escape and said they needed help. At night, Frank and his cellmate went to the roof of the building and opened the vent with the cellmate's help. The vent was screwed shut, but Frank was undeterred. All they needed was a drill and a flashlight, and they could open the vent. But it's hard to get those things in prison. The next day, it was entertainment time for the band to play. Frank asked his cellmate to get him a drill while the band played. Then he took the little fan while he was packing up the instruments. The guards didn't bother with Frank during the inspection, but had the convicts in the back open the bag. Frank let the guards check himself so that he wouldn't be suspected. But his cellmate also pretended to be very weak. The guards checked Frank's cellmate. At night, Frank took the fan apart and put the drill bit on it to make an improvised electric drill. The two of them went to the air vent. The cellmate helped Frank up and handed him the iron pipe. Frank pried open the bars, climbed in, and asked his cellmate to pass him the drill. He sees what's going on and starts drilling screws with the drill, quickly opening up the vent. They got a life valve and life jackets and arranged a time to escape together. At night, Frank says goodbye to the man selling newspapers. The man realized Frank was going to break out. Then the warden came soon after with the guards. The man digs a small hole with cockroaches and mud, but accidentally says he's going to break out. The warden came right away with the guards to search the place. The guards took away the cups and left only a shelf. Then the warden kept looking for something suspicious, but saw a box. Frank immediately showed a nervous expression, making the warden suspicious. The warden saw a violin inside the case and had to close it. Frank was so nervous, he waited for the warden to leave before he breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out that the vent was the key to his escape. He made a fake vent just in case something went wrong. The next day, they packed a life raft and life jackets and prepared to escape at night. At night, the men climbed up the vent to the roof of the building and proceeded cautiously. Then they climbed down the pipe and finally reached the first floor. The three of them escaped from the prison through the wire mesh and into the woods. They went to the beach and pumped the life raft and life jackets with their mouths and then inflated them. The three of them went into the sea and floated away with the life raft in their arms. The next day, when the guards called roll, Frank didn't respond. The guard opens the door to teach Frank a lesson, but is suddenly startled. He then blew his whistle, setting off the prison alarm. A large contingent of officers searched for them all day, but were unable to locate them. It was the first time since Yaqala prison's inception that a man had escaped. The warden looked at their papers and said they were dead and didn't want to ruin the reputation of the prison. They didn't find them, and Yaqala prison was closed down. This movie is based on true events. Located on an island off the coast of San Francisco, Yaqala prison is the hardest prison in the world to escape from. It once housed the gangster Akpan and the Chinese scientist Qian Shuesan. The three of them tricked the guards by placing fake heads on the bed and escaped through a tunnel. They escaped with a stolen life raft and life jackets. A year later, the prison was shut down for financial reasons and converted into a tourist attraction. With nearly 1.5 million visitors a year, it's the second most popular attraction in San Francisco. After the inmates escaped, authorities began an investigation that continues to this day and says it will continue. But the fugitives have disappeared since then and no one has heard from them since then. Whether they are alive or not has also become an unsolved mystery.